a concept that is recognized in the Babri Masjid case, saying Waqf for user is a practice, a religious practice that has continued for hundreds of years. That's the 5-judge bench, Maharaj. And whether it's a Waqf by user or not is a matter of evidence. But they've done away with it. How have they done away with it? They say that in the 1913 Act, the 1923 Act, the 1954 Act, and the later acts, there was a requirement for registration. And because you did not register, Maharaj, therefore, any Waqf which is not registered will not be regarded as Waqf. So many of these Waqfs by users were created 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 200 years ago, Maharaj, 500 years ago. Where will you get them?
Is it a matter of fact that under those enactments, 1913, 1923 and so on, is there a requirement for registration?
There was.
So is it a mandatory or
They shall be registered, they said. But Maharaj, the consequences of non-registration were not set up in the Act. The consequences of non-registration, this is the first time in the 2025.
I have not gone through anything because I had...
That's why, Maharaj, I'm broadly telling your lordship what my submissions are going to be.
I have not gone through... I'll be frank, so you'll have to start from ABCD.
Yes.
Just as a matter of information, as whether under the old Act,
yes,
the provision was for registration was mandatory or directly?
The expression used was shall.
Merely using shall may not make it mandatory.
Correct.
Were there any consequences provided in those acts for non-registration? If consequences are provided, then it will be mandatory. Whether word shall is used or not.
No, Maharaj, the consequences were not that it will not be regarded as a Waqf. That was never the consequence.
Was there anything that on account of registration of a particular...
You won't be regarded as...
No, something will happen.
No, there's no consequence that you will not be regarded as a Waqf. It will continue as a Waqf.
But there were consequences.
No, not this consequence.
But
For the caretaker, there may be consequences, but not this consequence.
We'll record your submission.
Yes, please.
That though under the old Act, there were requirements for registration, but they were not mandatory because the consequences for non-registration were not provided under those Acts.
For the purposes of deciding...
On account of non-registration,
yes,
nothing was to be happened.
Yes.
Like suppose if under certain Act, mandatory duty is there. You have to do such and such thing within a particular period.
Correct.
And if you don't do that, then you will be required to pay 1,000 rupees fine or 1 lakh rupees fine. So no such provision is there.
No. The only thing was, Maharaj, that the Act said that the Mutawalli who has not done it is made culpable. That's all. He loses his right to continue as a Mutawalli.
That's all.
That's all. As I said to your lordship, and I stand by that, there were no consequences provided that it will no longer be regarded as Waqf.
No,
which is...
No other consequences were there.
No other consequences. Which is why the 2025 takes that away.
So
Therefore, it's a complete departure.
So do we record that?
Yes, your lordship may record it. It's a complete departure from the
1913. Till what was the last one? 1913 till 2013.
Till 2013. The status of the Waqf.
2013.
Yeah.
Though
the status and character of the Waqf.
Though there was a provision.
Yes.
For registration of.
Yes.
A Waqf.
Yes.
No consequences were provided.
Right.
Were provided for non-compliance.
Right.
Except removal of a Mutawalli.
Correct, because he is responsible for registration of the Waqf.
So there, except removal of a Mutawalli.
Yes. Consequences qua the Mutawalli.
Not a trust, not a Waqf.
Correct. Well, that's for the community, Malad. So because he did not register, he will suffer the consequences, but the character of the Waqf will not change and cannot. This changes it. I'm just giving you losses broadly. This changes the character of the Waqf. It says if you're not registered under these acts, then you're no longer Waqf. That's number one. Number two, if you are a Waqf by user, you must tell us as to who is the one who established the Waqf. Well, how do we know? If it is established 200 years ago, how will anybody tell you today who established it? Because there was no registration at that point in time. They were user. That is why Waqf by user is a matter of evidence held by the Constitution bench of this court.
1913 to 2013.
Yes. Well, that's 23 was the first one actually.
Whether during 1913 to 2013, registration was not necessary insofar as Waqf by user is concerned.
Yes, yes. They have now removed it completely.
Was it permissible under the
Yes, 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 yes. Yes, yes. Throughout, Manoj. Otherwise, I wouldn't be making this submission. Works by user, this is established practice recognized by the Constitution bench of this court.
Second submission is that prior to 2025, work by user was not required to be registered.
What happened was, Manoj, in 1954, for the first time, there was a requirement of registration as such. Otherwise, 23. Yes. मैं कह रहा हूँ यार तुम बता रहे हो गलत बोल रहे हो
2020.
Your Lordship may say prior to 1923 or prior to after 1954, Manoj, what happened was when the British were here, they didn't want to interfere in the practices, religious practices, provisions or management provisions, Manoj, in those acts. But in 1954, it became mandatory that you must register. Now, who was to register? The Muttawalli. The Muttawalli was not
prior to 1954.
Yes.
Registration of work by user was not necessary.
No, no, nobody was questioning work by user ever. Till date, Manoj, nobody is questioning except this act, except the 2025 act.
Probably you have not understood the question. What we are only asking you, was it mandatory or required to be registered as a Waqf under the acts prevalent at that relevant time as a Waqf?
After
Maybe by
1954,
Waqf
yes.
by user.
After 1954, yes.
Yes. So
Yes.
after 1954,
Yes.
the registration was mandatory.
Mandatory.
And it had to be-
Even insofar as work by user is concerned.
Yes, yes. Even by works by user. All works had to be registered. Muttawalli had to register them. If he did not register them, then consequences followed way here.
on the Muttawalli.
But we'll see into
The
that.
work property did not lose its character as work. That's the point.
So according to you, prior to 1954,
Yes.
registration of work by user was not necessary and it became necessary after 1954. Was not necessary.
2025.
I'm saying that, but these fellows are either saying 23 or...
Only after 1954 it became necessary.
Yes.
Only after 1954 it.
Manoj, there is some confusion on this, maybe after 23, after 1923. Your Lordship may write 1923 because,
Okay.
Yeah.
I will write.
say 1923, Manoj, not
We are
1954.
recording everything so that we can call upon them to answer all.
1923 because I've read the act myself. That's why I was saying 1923. 23, Manoj.
Problem is that
So
much of pressure
yes.
not only builds pressure on us but also on you.
Yeah, exactly, Manoj. I got different discordant voices here.
23.
So therefore we are
Yes, just I show you that the 23 Act says within 6 months from the commencement.
first we'll
Yeah.
first we'll record your proposition
Yes.
so that
Yes, so that we know, Manoj, what.
It's not to disturb Mr. Sibal, Malad. He's continuously being disturbed from all.
That's all right. Don't worry. I'll take care of it.
Yes, sir. You must.
he is trying his best. We can we can see it in a better manner.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, we can-
others may not
Yeah,
disturb.
we can see it in a better manner. He has tried at least half a dozen times.
So therefore, that's the proposition. Let's make it 23, not
Okay,
54.
23. After 23, it was necessary.
Yes, necessary. But no consequences square the dedication.
So that we already recorded.
Yes. So, Malad, that's the second proposition. You take away Waqf by user. Third proposition is, Malad, just note two dates, 1904 and 1958. These acts relate to Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Sites and Remains Act of 1958. And there is the 1904 Act, which is also here, which is the Ancient Monuments Preservation Act of 1904.
Ancient Monument.
Preservation Act 1904. So two acts, 1904 and 1958, both dealing with ancient monuments.
Both 1904 as well as 50.
And 1958. So, Malads, when this 1904 Act came, Malads, as your Lordship knows, Waqfs were there. The
The Waqf will, from centuries, we are saying that there.
Waqfs have been there, Malads. So, what the Act did not interfere. For example, Malads, you have, say, the Jama Masjid or any other places of worship. It's a Waqf, but it's getting dilapidated. Right? So the government can say, we want to preserve this property. We want to make sure it doesn't get dilapidated. And therefore, they give a notification saying that for the purposes of preserving the property, it is declared as an ancient monument. Right? But it doesn't lose its character. It doesn't mean that you can't go and pray there.
So, though it is preserved as an ancient monument, but
no ownership was transferred to the government. And it doesn't, you couldn't stop the user of the Waqf property for the purposes of the dedication. You couldn't change the identity either.
like in